we'll start with the very idea of what is the purpose of education. And I have about 15 minutes. I'll quickly take you through that why are we reimagining the schools of the future. So we have to start with the very purpose. So there's a quiz for you. Is it A, skills to learn life, skills so that you could earn one's livelihood? Is it social awareness towards better citizenship? Is it, as Martin Luther King says, intelligence and character development? Or is it all of the above? Yeah, it is all of the above, and that's what India had always stood for. Education is embarking on endless self-discovery. So today schools are only doing the first one, and that too not a very good job of it, because they are not teaching us to become lifelong learners. Most of the jobs today are going to be irrelevant in 20 years' time. So what is it that the schools of tomorrow should be? And incidentally, that's the working title of my book, The Schools of Tomorrow. And there are the 5 pillars that I talk about in that book from our experience at the SECMOL school and now the University at HIAL, which I'll be quickly putting in front of you. So this is how HIAL looked from the aircraft when I took off, when we were allotted this land. And it was a scary sight, not a grass that grew, not a drop of water. This is Ladakh. And luckily, there was a similar desert back in '94, which was given to us, and that became the SECMOL school that we all know of. And this was the precedent we had, which gave us the confidence. Though this was closer to the Indus, we are quite far away, but this is only for 10th grade failure students, 16-year-olds, and university is for postgraduates. So we thought, why not work out a business, a kind of a vision document for it. We invited all the students from schools, colleges, the villagers, the architects, educators, curriculum designers, and this was the vision that they developed. And we really loved this vision because it was very audacious, with so much greenery and water. And that's what we set out to make. And this is how the site began to look. And this is our master plan, which is the 9 schools that we are envisioning at HIAL. And I'll quickly touch upon a few of those. This is based on the Upekha path of Buddhism and Indian spirituality, where you evolve from material to spiritual. So we have School of Architecture right at the start here, and this is the School of Architecture, Energy, Tourism and Ecology. This is a K-12 educational school. This is School of Design, Innovation, Entrepreneurship. This is Humanities and Liberal Arts, Social and Political Leadership, and School of Spirituality. So the master plan is from material to spiritual. And the 5 pillars that it is set on is: number 1, education has to be contextual. This is Ladakh, very different from rest of India. This is how it looks in winters and this is how it looks in summers. It is a high altitude cold desert fed only by glacial melt. There is nothing called monsoons as you are having now, beautiful rains. And the temperatures vary from -30 to +35. So most of the policies that the government makes are for 90% tropical India. This is a marginalized place, so people and youth have to be empowered to take care of their context, right? Because there's nobody going to help them. The policies which government brings there are very relevant. We'll talk about some of them. So this is the context there. And one of the problems there is, how do you make homes there at -35? These kinds of homes don't even work here. We have to have ACs. How would they work there? So we learned from not Europe or the US what they're doing today, but from our indigenous ancestors what they were doing, and they were making with mud, and we reverse engineered some of their work, and we are now making buildings like this. So these are the buildings which won us a lot of awards at Switzerland and France Global Award of Architecture. And this was the building that SECMOL had pioneered 30 years ago. But at HIAL what we did was we built 5 such buildings with same footprint, 1,000 square feet, but different materials, and all done by our students. Then we studied the graph that when the Indian temperature was -10 to 5, and when heated buildings at this red, this is the heated building, is between 5 and 10, but when you remove heating it falls to 0 to 5, which is not thermal comfort. All our buildings in the coldest January stayed between 20 and 25 degrees without any artificial heating. So this is the School of Eco-Responsive Architecture teaching postgraduate students how to build. And then we scale them up on our campus itself. Like each of the 1,000 square feet buildings, which were made of rammed earth or straw clay, was scaled up into large 35,000 buildings like this academic and admin block or staff facility. This is our gymnasium that is coming up, and our common dining hall, to scale up the proof of concept and make a policy document to the government so that they can start believing in earth and mud and passive solar heated. And now it is a policy document in UT of Ladakh that all tourism buildings should be passive solar heated. So once we had scaled up to about 1 lakh square feet, which we built on our campus, then we went ahead and proposed this to the Indian Army, because our 1 lakh square feet saves about 3,000 tons of carbon emissions. This building sector contributes maximum 40% to the global warming and carbon emissions. So Army even generates more carbon because they are on forward areas. Taking fuel there is very expensive, both environmentally and financially. So we scaled it up for the Indian Army, another 1 lakh square feet. And the students design and build these. Therefore, we are perhaps the only university in the world that does not charge fees to our students. In fact, we pay them internship stipends because we encourage them to pay not with money, which they borrow from their parents, but with their own hard work and creativity. That's what makes education inclusive for all. So this is contextual education, where you solve the problems of the context, and that way India can be the innovation capital of the world, because every region has its own sets of contextual problems, be it floods or be it droughts or be it water or be it sanitation. And if we can empower our youth to solve each of these problems and scale them up into enterprises, we would have had a transformed India. So we then built also for high-end resorts, because in India, mitti ka ghar is associated with poor people, So how do you make it aspirational? So we built high-end resorts and very luxurious places, because these are not actually kacha ghar. The palace which I showed you in the earlier picture has lasted for 1500 years. And these cement buildings have an age of maybe 60 to 70 years. So the pakka ghars are actually kacha ghars. And mitti ka ghar are pakka, if we know how to build them. So going back to our indigenous wisdom and working with it through innovation and blending it with modern technology, that is what our Indian youth have to do and lead the world, and not copy what the West is doing, because they are actually behind us. Our ancient years are the futures that are going to be. So we have to reclaim those. So the next this is the first pillar, that we have to empower kids to understand the context, the problems, as well as the opportunities it provides. Because Uttarakhand, there are 1,000 ghost villages. People have left and come as refugees to Delhi, whereas mountain areas have a lot of resources, which if we know how to, use regeneratively, we need not have ghost villages all across, not just in India, even in Spain and a lot of countries in the world. It's becoming very urban centric, the development, and which is not sustainable. So contextual education plays the key there. The next pillar is experiential. So all these that our students do, they do by actually doing. And here I'll take the example of the ice stupas, which in winters they make to green the desert. These are artificial glaciers which store water in winter when it is not needed, so that they can use it in spring. And we started with one village for which we won the Rolex award, which was the seed money for our university. And today we have scaled it up within Ladakh to about 23 villages, and they store about 100 million liters of water. A lot of the youth in all these villages have been trained. We do competition to make it fun, and every year the biggest one gets a prize. And they are so innovative that they not only make big artificial glaciers, but some of them do mountaineering there, some of them make cafes inside. But it has also spread to about 6 countries in the world. We have staff that goes to Switzerland, Chile, Gilgit-Baltistan, Nepal to build this. And we are perhaps the only university, one of the few ones, that does reverse technology transfer. Like our passive solar heated buildings are now through UNDP being built in Afghanistan. Our artificial glaciers are being built in so many other countries, and all student-led. So they experientially go and solve this. That is the second pillar of education, experiential learning. The third is it is transdisciplinary. So we don't teach subjects. We give them real-life problems, and they have to use whatever disciplines to solve them. So one such center of excellence is rehabilitation of villages. As I told you, a lot of villages are getting emptied in Ladakh. So one such village is Kulum, which was very beautiful at once upon a time, but now people have left because the canals have dried up. So the question was to our students, can we again make it a story of hope and a valley of flowers? So 4 of our schools got together. The School of Ecology built ice stupas there and brought water to the village. Then the School of Plantation, they went and grew and like agricultural products. So year before last, 15 years, after 15 years, we harvested about 1,500 kilos of potatoes. And last year, about 5,000 kilos of broccoli and peas and all of that, and half the village has moved back already. So, the School of Eco-Responsive Buildings now is retrofitting and making most of their homes passive solar so that they don't have to migrate in winters. And our School of Tourism is curating it as an edu-tourism destination, so that people from across the world can come and learn how a village can be rehabilitated. So after this, several other villages have been rehabilitated. So this is transdisciplinary. Because the second village may not have these problems. It may not have water problems. It may have no schools, or it may have other issues. So transdisciplinary means you are going away from the ego of the speciality, but focusing more on what the world needs, and you are bringing those specialities together to solve that problem. And this is the harvest, happily. The next pillar of our education is undoing what was done to India a few hundred years ago, when the British came and they wanted a class of just clerks. Okay, so our education system is all about getting that answer right at the end of the book. It is not about higher order thinking, if not about questioning status quo as was shown in this play here. We all want to comply, we want to be right. Whereas here, innovation happens when you fail, when you try, when you are wrong. So how do you inculcate that? So we all know the Bloom's taxonomy as educators. So mapping it to our Indian knowledge systems, remember and understand is what we call chitta in the Gita. It is the passive and active memory which we need to have as the basis of education. The apply and analyze is our sense mind, the manas. And evaluate and create is the buddhi. So very little of our education is about buddhi, about evaluating, creating, But what we still don't have is higher orders of the mind, which Indian, the Patanjali's, Yoga Sutras or our rishis had reached. Because without telescopes and without external measuring sense instruments, they could come to the speed of light and other things, because there is another way of knowing, of knowledge. Science and spirituality are the two sides of the same coin. Science both try to understand reality, the truth. The methods are different. Science uses scientific, empirical data through the senses objectively, turned outwards, whereas there is another way of knowing turned within, subjectively, experientially, which we have missed out in a civilization ever since last 1,000 years or so, and more so after the Industrial Revolution and when the West started dominating all our frameworks, including educational frameworks. So how do we inculcate those higher orders of the mind and deeper orders of the heart? Because in the face of AI, what is it that we have that makes us human? If the computer can do better than me in most things, then it's better let it do, because why do we dehumanize ourselves if a machine can do something better? So isn't it therefore a pointer that evolution is pointing us towards developing what makes us more human? And it is this ability to be wise, to intuit, what was a stray calculus, benzene, or an Einstein is equal to mc square, or a Mozart's great piece of music. Can it be something taught to a child, that it is not a stray genius that is just born, but it is something that can be developed? So that as educators we have to focus on, how to develop those higher ranges of the mind, and also those deeper heart, not our emotional heart, or what we call our soul or our psyche, which is inherently one, experiences oneness, interdependence. That is what will make us human in the future. So this is our fourth pillar of education, and that brings us to embracing what India always stood for and not shying away from it, and which is spirituality. We know about the 3 R's of reading, writing, arithmetic. This was education in the Industrial Revolution with numeracy and literacy. 100 years ago, educators, thinkers like Gandhiji, Krishnamurti, Steiner, and a lot of others, they said, let us move to 3 H's, head, heart, and hands, because reading, writing, arithmetic had only to do with the head. What about a kind heart and skilled hands? And for the next school of the future, 100 years, I propose from the Upanishads, the language, 3 A's, which is Adhibhuta. Adhibhuta is the knowledge of the material world, the knowledge of the physical world, everything that our senses can perceive. And Adhidaiva is the non-material world, our thoughts and feelings and relational. We have just reached here in our education, we are still not talking of the 3rd A, which is Adhyatma, and which is what India always stood for and has contributed to the world. So unless we bring spirituality actively into our curriculum, we cannot hope to become the Vishwa Guru or the leaders of the world, because others have done these two better than us. It is this that as Indians we have to contribute to the world. And it is nothing woolly-woolly. the spirituality, it is very much a process, practice-driven thing. It is the finding out of who am I and how do I express myself the best. What the Japanese call ikigai, or what the Bhagavad Gita says is your swadharma. You know, swa is mine and dharma is dhri, what holds me, what anchors me. And each one of us is that unique self and expression that has to be found out and lived. Not what is the trend, not what is the next big wave of livelihood, not what is going to do, be the next unicorn thing. That is not how we decide what we have to do in life, but finding out who we are and what we can best express. So that is the fifth pillar, moving from 3Rs to 3S to 3As. And this is what I have built as an infographic which captures all of that. So the child is at the center. It is not curriculum driven, it is not pedagogy driven, it is not educator driven, it is not CBSE or LCRT driven education. It is child focused. So child is not a like a metal that has to be hammered into some desired shape by the teacher or the parent or anybody, but it is like a flower that has to bloom into its own uniqueness. And as teachers and parents and educators and policymakers, all we can do is be like gardeners, create the ecosystem, have the soil ready, get sunlight, water, and then allow the child to flower into its own uniqueness. So that's the center. And Adibhuta is the knowledge of nature, material world, God, what God has made or what naturally it is there, which is the knowledge of natural world and how the world works. And this can only happen through contextual education, when the child can relate to it. And this gives rise to material freedom. If we understand our context, like ancient India, 80% of our staple needs were met by the local resources itself, be it our home, roti, kapra and makan. But now, because of this so-called, we have been sold into this globalization mindset. But that is, we know the problem, right? UK is today facing energy poverty because of the Ukraine war, because they can't generate their own energy. In COVID, US faced the supply chain breakdown. People didn't have food. But a far away village in Ladakh, Zanskar, which is cut off from the rest of the world for 9 months, is self-sufficient because they grow barley, which grows in that high altitude. They have food for the whole year, they have their own animals, they have their own clothes. So why can't we be sustainable locally? And that can happen through contextual education. Adhidaiva is the relational aspects of us, knowledge of society, and that is through the man-made world and ideas that change the world. So all the systems that we have created, educational, healthcare, judiciary, economic, it is not something that has been given to us. It is people like you and me who thought about it one day, and it has now become a worldwide phenomenon. So why can't our students create tomorrow's phenomenon? Why have we just to live with hand-me-downs? We can be creators. And that happens through higher order thinking and deeper order feeling. And this gives rise to social transformation. Because I may be a very well-to-do person in Afghanistan with a lot of material freedom, but if I don't have socially transformed place and I'm living amidst Taliban, I cannot have a fulfilled life. So along with, we cannot just be okay that 60% of our kids don't have proper schools to go to. I cannot be happy that just my child goes to the best private English medium school. We have to also work for this social transformation. Everybody has to be uplifted, and that's how we have to teach our kids. It's not just their own livelihoods, but after a point, the rest. And finally, Adhyatma is who am I and how do I express myself, knowledge of me. We in the last 200 years have tremendously developed objective knowledge of the world, the stars, the galaxies, the atoms, neutrons, but we are suffering from mental illnesses. Why? Because we haven't focused that much on understanding our subjective selves. So, true subjectivity is spirituality, and it is to understand who am I and how to express myself, which happens through experiential education, and that leads to personal transformation. Because you can be in Sweden, which you have a lot of material freedom, very good socially transformed policies, but highest suicide rates in the world in Scandinavia, because you don't have a higher purpose, of finding yourself and expressing. So this is what gives us a fulfilled life, and I'm happy to share with you that this infographic, along with HIAL's pedagogy, will be on display as a permanent exhibit at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London as a pedagogy of the future. So this is being now translated into a K-12 school within the university, because to have an innovative university you need to have kids from whose creativity, as Ken Robinson says, hasn't been destroyed by schools from kindergarten. And so the briefing to the architects was, and I have worked on this design, that this is how it should look, as an infinite loop of learning, which is education. You never end. It's a spiral constantly of growth. And this is how the design evolved from there. That from the aircraft again, or the drone, it has to look like this infographic. And this is how the spaces will be. This is how the school that's getting built and will be commissioned next year. There won't be classrooms here, but 6 learning spaces spiraling upward, about the 6 areas that I discussed. And there'll be an indoor-outdoor seamless transition. The whole village will be the learning space, and this is how it will be. There won't be any partitions, classrooms. It's like a free progress. The child can be, so if you ask the child in the school, which class are you in, he would say in English or maths or in science, because he could be in class 5 in science, class 2 in English, class 4 in maths. You don't have to, group them vertically age-wise. There can be vertical grouping of their. So this is what is being built as we speak and will be commissioned next year. And this is how we are trying to build the school of the future, the university of the future. And I would like to end with my favorite shairi, which I request all of you to be, that Nahi tera nashiman kasre sultani ki gumbad par tu shahi hai, shahi बसेरा कर पहाड़ों की चट्टानों पर. Don't be a pigeon that lives in some, sultan's gumbad, in comfort zones. Be like that eagle that flies high and lives freely on the mountains. Thank you.